And we are live. I am Susan Taylor Brown, and I am here with some friends of mine from the alumni mastermind group at Stop the Starving Artist, where artists of all various mediums gather to help support one another in growing their creative art businesses and the frustrations and joys that come along with being artists. So I would love for you to all meet my friends. If I can just kind of point around the screen, and maybe you can tell a little bit about yourself. For those of you that don't know me, I am a fiber artist based in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I am obsessed with texture and trying to bring a little bit of nature to your life so that you will feel more grounded and more connected with the world. Hannah?
Hi, I'm Hannah, and this is Nemo, and we are a married couple and collaborative art team. We make moving mosaics out of aluminum cans, as you can see here behind me. And we're just trying to make the world a better place for everyone and just kind of um, being role models for our audience. And we're very happy to be here today with you, Susan.
Glad to have you here. Maria?
Yeah, I'm Maria. I am currently a watercolor artist, and my main focus with my art is mindfulness and nature. So I try to combine those with my art, and I like to have my art serve as like a portal to a calm and tranquil place that people can go to and yeah, just relax and feel recharged.
Lisa?
I am Lisa, and I am a sculptor out of St. Louis, Missouri. I work in clay, and my goal is to create sculpture that affirms emotions and stories and journeys of people. And that's kind of what I do. And I love texture too, Susan.
Britt?
Hi, I'm Britt. I'm a visual artist from the Netherlands, and I focus mainly on making jewelry out of precious metals, inspired by history, like historical finds, and nature.
Bona?
Hi, I'm from Germany, and I'm a watercolor artist, and I love to encourage watercolor beginners and teach them a little. Mainly I do landscapes, I just love them.
Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol, and I live in Oklahoma City, and I'm a mixed media / fiber artist. My big focus is work on tea bags, but I also like to teach, and I hope that I can encourage other people to use tea bags in their art.
I love it. I love that we have so many different mediums here. All right, you guys feeling brave? Shall we check out the picker wheel and see what we've got? Let's see.
Yep.
I need to put it in the view. All right, let's spin the wheel.
Ooh.
This is fun.
Yeah.
How to stop seeking outside validation.
Oh no.
I know. See, none of us struggle with that, right?
No, what is that?
That is
Well,
like
it not outside validation when somebody actually purchases your art? So isn't that what we're trying to do every day?
Well, that's true. But it's interesting that would be the one that came up, because in my live stream yesterday, one of the gals said, I always tell my friends, I don't want you to like my art just because you're my friends. And then she said, and then suddenly somebody didn't like my art that was my friend, and I was crushed. And I was like, how do you deal with that feeling of wanting everybody that you're connected with to love your art? And I mean, I have friends that make beautiful abstract art that it does nothing for me, but I love them. But we're always seeking that outside validation. I don't know. Anybody have anything they want to say? Or shall I point?
You're
I don't
a good leader, Susan.
Yeah.
The validation is in so many forms. It's like anything from those, the likes on your posts. I try to not care about that, like how many people actually like my art in this picture. But yeah, it can be very hurtful when you realize, like, for example, I don't think my grandma likes my art. Like, I think she's super proud of me. So I deal with that, like it's not something she's going to hang in her house. Just like you said, Susan, like maybe somebody who does something that's just not your taste, and that's not what they would hang up.
She's always like, when is Nemo gonna make his art again?
Yeah, like she likes to get used
out.
So I think we personally are very content with what we do now, because our sales are good. So that's a really good reflection. And like, as long as we can keep affording to live, to pay the bills, to buy food and get what we need, I mean, maybe that's the only validation that we need. So if somebody doesn't like it, yeah, it can hurt for a minute, but I'm going to keep doing this because this is what I like. So that's how I would deal with it.
I have a story for with my grandma too. I was at my grandparents' house when I saw the floral paintings, and I was really proud of it. So I told them immediately, and she was like, "Well, you never know what people might like." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." Yeah, it's a tough one, but yeah.
Yes.
I like though what you said in our earlier conversation, Mona, where you said you post something, and that could be whether you're making a video post, a personal post, or you're sharing a piece of your art, and then you don't go back and look at the likes. You don't go back and look at the, so to put something out there in the world and take your joy where the journey is, and then just let it go. And then, because you got to go off and make some more art.
Yes, and on some days it works really well. Others not so much for me, but sometimes it also feels like running. I said that also, like in another meeting. I said like, it doesn't feel like stepping away sometimes. Sometimes it feels like running.
Yeah,
but it's still all right. You come back to it, and then you're surprised by what came out of it.
Yeah, I also like what Lennon used to always say is like collect the evidence. So something that you can, and I started that too. And it does really help because I think everyone reacts. Like if you do see negative comments, or if you do see no comments, or if you do, if someone doesn't like your art, or you maybe have a bad day where you don't sell anything, if you're somewhere. But, having that to go back to, like the best comments or something someone said to you, or, there's so many things. Like I really loved how when we did our alumni meetings, how we did kind of this, essence thing, and I think that was so validating. I know I shouldn't shouldn't, but but it is like, I feel so good after that.
Yeah.
Right? So,
and it doesn't hurt to seek that out from people that are in our support system, to say, Hannah, I'm feeling kind of down today. Can you tell me something good? Tell me something good about me. Tell me something I did right. I mean, that's why we're building the support system, so that we can reach out and have that, because we expose ourselves. When we expose our art, we're exposing our innermost selves, because we're all creating from that heart of us. And we put that out in the world. And somebody, I had somebody tell me the other day in my live stream that she made a video and somebody posted a mean girl comment in it. And she said, I haven't made another video since. And it's like, we give away our power to the audience, and we shouldn't do that. Okay, it's a should, but let's not give away our power. And how can we do that? What mind games can we play with ourselves to say, I can't control how you accept or reject what I'm putting out there. I can just put it out there.
Yeah, and I think it also helps if people are being mean or rude or something, or short with you. I like to imagine, what's going on in their life or something, like, oh, they had a really bad day or whatever. Yes. They stepped on a Lego, Yeah.
Another thing to remember is that creating is hard, but I think criticizing is easy.
Yeah.
So a lot of times this is in and out of their minds when people say these like rude little comments. They don't think about it again. And for us, like we spend so much time making that post or that video or that art piece or whatever it is, that we are really attached to it. And for someone to come and say like, oh, my 5-year-old could do that or something of that effect, it's like, it's like taking the wind out of your sails for the rest of the day, the week, or the month or whatever. And I don't know, another kind of funny anecdote. We had made one of our first mosaics and we were showing pictures to my aunt. This was a while ago. And she said, "Oh, and how much are you going to charge for something like this?" And I said, "Well, we charge $1,200. We've sold several of these." "And you're not even dead yet," was her comment.
Yeah.
As though only dead famous artists can sell their art for that much money.
Right. I think too, when the Mean Girls comments come, there's something that they see in your work that is wrong with their own work. And it may not be wrong with yours, but they're like, oh, well, look at how perfect her circles are. My circles aren't perfect. Therefore, I should, reach out and criticize her because that's going to make me feel better, even though that's warped.
Yeah, I think they're helping.
And I always say, drop them and block them.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a kind of easy thing to keep in your head. You don't have to engage. Yeah.
And we are only human. We want to be seen and heard, and you can try and not think about it, but you're gonna do it anyway. That's a part of being human.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're not going to reach everybody, but by the same token, you're not going to know who you're reaching, because sometimes that person you're reaching is the one that's too terrified to speak up. And you're saying something. And Lisa, I'm thinking about the videos you've been putting out lately. I know you've been putting a lot of work into those videos, and I see the emotion and the growth from the first ones. And I'm loving your journey so much. If you guys have not gone over to Lisa's Instagram and watched the videos she's putting over there, go check it out, because her journey of connecting the emotions. But you don't know. I think there are a lot of people that see those, or as they discover you as an artist, are going to go back and see those. They are going to be the ones that are still hiding behind the potted plant in the corner of the room. They're not the ones that are brave enough to say, in public, on Instagram, you spoke to me. I mean, we get those comments and we love those, right? But the ones that I'm excited about are the ones that I don't hear from, because I know they need somebody to say what it is that we're saying to them.
It's very true. And since I've started on this journey, I've had a lot of people who I know that have said, wow, you've really stepped it up on your social media, and I really like seeing how you're doing and blah, 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 blah. But back to validation, it's interesting because as an artist, for me, it's a second career. When we struggle, when you go to a show or you do something and it doesn't sell like you want it to sell or whatever, and you have your well-meaning family and friends that are like, well, maybe if you did XYZ, that would sell. Or maybe if you did blah, 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 that would sell. And you're like, okay, and you question yourself because you need the validation that the work is decent. And you're like, okay, is it the work? Is it really that bad? Or is it I just haven't found my audience and I need to keep plugging and growing and developing and I'll get there. So, and you know that they mean well because they know that you want to sell or you want to be successful, but what they're not realizing is that you're creating something that's important to you on some level. And that by saying, why don't you do X, Y, Z, it's sort of diminishing what you've done.
I don't think I realized the importance. No, I don't have to say I don't think. I know I did not realize the importance of finding my audience until I started this journey a few years ago, because I was chasing, well, if I make this and I sell, if I sell it for $10 and I sell 100 of them, oh my goodness, well, but if I make this and I sell it for, and that was the mentality, this poverty mentality. What can I make to make money right now? I didn't think about what can I make that I really, really enjoy, and finding that zone of genius that Lennon talks about, the things that I love and the things that are people, willing to pay for. And I feel right now I'm at I know what I love. I am not necessarily where people are willing to pay for it. And I'm trying to be okay with that push-pull tug-of-war because I really want to just keep diving deeper. And that means I'm going to be shrinking some of my audience until the right people find me. So I find that a very difficult path to walk. And then at the same time, looking for validation, people can say, well, I love that, but there's no way I want to buy that. Carol, what about you in seeking validation? What do you think?
Well, I I agree with everything that you guys but I have battled about 10 years ago, a woman on through the internet. I'd taken a class from her, and after I got home and I was talking about what I'd learned, and she picked me apart. She slammed me hard. She called me names.
Oh
She
no.
did all kinds of, and I was thinking back to what you said. Her problem is her problem, but she was looking at me saying that I was her problem. But it knocked me to the ground for about 10 years, and only now am I beginning to recover. And
Wow.
the bad part is that I don't know if anybody had told me, this wasn't a personal thing on me. If they'd told me then, if I would have believed it. But now I'm learning more, and I have to say this, that Maria, bless her heart, when we were at the town hall thing, and she was having interaction with Lennon back and forth. The topic that you brought up about the problem is something that you need to grow beyond. That's how I interpreted that, was huge for me, because I have been reticent. I've been really reluctant to get out in the world because I'm afraid that woman's going to come out of the woodwork and get me again. But so see, that's my problem, which is why I think I don't do the 20-30 and do it religiously, because I'm scared. And so that message was very important to me, and I appreciate you being honest and bringing that thing up, because it was valuable.
Yeah.
And please know that should somebody come out of the woodwork now, you have an army behind you now. You know we are going to come
right back into the woodworks.
Yes, yes. You are not alone to fight that battle. I'm sorry you had that experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I've spoken before about the art teacher that booted me out of the class, and it was over 40 years before I even thought about art, because those words have power. And something I know I'm personally really trying to do is tell different stories, because after 40 years, you have to start to wonder how much of that is the story that the words he actually said, or is it just the way he made me feel? If I look back at it now, and I've even tried to track back, I don't know why, but track back, I think it might have been a mechanical drawing class, which was not art per se, but that was the way back then in the 60s. They didn't have just art classes unless you were in a special kind of school, but it's just trying to find the right story to retell myself, that was not the right time for me to dive into art. Okay. So he took me on another journey, and I need to reframe that story. I see. Was there anything in the sometimes I don't like my work. Ooh, that's a good one. Do you guys ever not like your work, and do you still
yeah.
Yeah, sometimes,
Mhm.
yeah,
Especially older work.
Yeah, and then it's hard to think about that. No, someone else will like it. Like, you're not making it just for you. You want it to go somewhere, right?
And it's fun. I like seeing the artists that post, here's my painting well, Maria, you did one of those, didn't you? Your watercolor paintings when you first started, and then a couple years later.
Yeah, like a progression.
It's really a neat thing to see, where we started. And because I was thinking about that, I want to pull some pictures of my early stitching, and it's like it's nothing like what I was doing now. And it's good for the world to see that, but it's also very affirming for us to say, look at how I've grown. And I think it's more than just a matter of growing. One of the questions that's on the wheel, whether or not it'll pop up again, is like finding your style. And I think it's a matter of discovering what we really love to do. Is this something we love to do? We're going to get better at it. If it's something we're not that crazy about, every art class I've ever taken, they say, well, you start with a book and a pencil and you sketch it out. And to me, that's like saying, well, go out there and perform Swan Lake right now in front of an audience, because my brain, 30 years of writing, my brain was all into words and articulating the words of the vision, not doing the vision. So when I finally had to say, that doesn't work for me, that doesn't make me happy, I can go now. I find I can sketch out broad things, but they don't have to look like anything. It's just so I want a big thing of brown here.
Well, I also think that if our work isn't changing in any way, we're not taking in the world, we're not taking in the stimulation, we're not growing inside as a person if we're not learning from what we've created in the past and building on it into the future. Even if it's within the same zone, I think it reflects us if we're not at least trying to change on some level. It's like the potter who is throwing pots for 30, 40 years, but his pots from when he started, things interest him different. He gets influenced differently. It all plays into it, I think.
When I look at Hannah and Nemo's mosaics, you could look at them and say they're all circles of mosaics. But if you look at, and you did this too, didn't you, Hannah? You did a retrospective and the early stuff. And then you get to the Fibonacci pieces. And it's like you can see how they have narrowed their focus into areas that really fascinate them as artists. And their work has grown exponentially.
Yes, it's small little changes. Yeah, it's small things. It's not big, huge realizations or anything like that. But even compared to what we started with, I think when we first discovered what we can do to create a mosaic, we were both of the mind that we had to somehow make it like super impressive. So we were representing subjects and stuff. And we were like, this is a simple thing. And if anybody's going to care, we have to make it complicated. And that was wrong because we did not really, for us, it was wrong. We did not really enjoy that process. It was sort of like this struggle all the time, especially for me to come up with like, what am I going to represent next? And also, like you said, like kind of second guessing, like what do I think people are going to want to buy for what price and what size? Then one day we kind of just woke up and we talked about it with each other. And we said, what do you like doing? What do you like the best about our art? What is the thing that you are most excited to do? And of course, this is two minds having to have an agreement all the time because we do it together. So it's a little bit different. And we both agreed that we preferred that the beauty of our artwork for us was just the colors and the pattern and the rhythm, and not the subjects at all. Like we didn't, we did not feel connected to a landscape or depicting an animal or something, which we were good at, and it was very impressive. Don't get me wrong. I mean, and it's a weird thing now to kind of show people these older things we did, and now what we're doing looks almost elementary by comparison. And a lot of people get upset, and they're just like, "What? Like you can depict people? Why aren't you doing this?" And it's because it's like, well, we don't feel like that's not us. Like we like the sort of just the overall color that's created by a jumble of these punches from the aluminum cans, or the pattern, just a grid, or like the Fibonacci sequence, or now we're doing these mandala designs. Like this is what we like. And this is what gets us excited about our own work. And so we dropped that other stuff, even though there's like so much more skill involved. And it's okay. We're like, yeah, we can draw. We can do things kind of, complicated and that have more expression. But
even before that, like we used to do like paintings and sculptures and, watercolor. We used to work with acrylics.
We tried a lot of stuff.
Like
together.
We always felt like we had to have something for everybody. Like no matter who comes into our little gallery or whatever, we had to have something for everybody.
I think it's what's interesting is when Hannah, when you said about you went to something that seems simpler from a technical perspective, which I don't think it is, but the thing really behind it goes back to validation again. You said, well, we can draw and we can do all this stuff, but you don't have to prove it anymore, so like you're getting to the point where you don't have to prove it. And it kind of goes back into this validation, because I think that's that's something for me too. I didn't go to art school. I just taught myself, so I always had this a little bit of this feeling in the background that's like, okay, I need to prove that I also know all of these techniques that they learn in art school, otherwise I'm not good enough of an artist, so
yes,
that's
definitely a thing. Yeah, it's a phenomenon. And related to that, I think even to take it another step is defining what art is. And for me, of course, what we make is art. It's our art form. It's our creative outlet. But when I think about like what a master oil painter could do or something, I question whether or not this is art at all, because it's like, what kind of skill are we displaying, showing that we can hammer nails?
So that's the whole history of art, right? We had the masters, and then they started getting more abstracted, and then it was all about color theory, and we all know that's valid art.
Yes, you're right. But you still question it, because you think like, well, like I'm not displaying, I'm not like proving that I have the skills to do these other kinds of things that look more complex, or that the mainstream audience might perceive as being more important. But once you find your audience, that is the key, is that it took a long time to find our audience. But part of that was agreeing between each other what it is that we want to make and what we love making, and let's just do that. From here moving forward, let's just do that. And that was a definite turning point in us being able to find our audience.
Seeing the growth that you guys have had, I think really that is a testimony to being true to your artistic selves. You need to find what it is that, what excites you. I mean, I can live with dishes in the sink. I can live with clutter all over the floor. But I want to sit there. I never want to stop picking up my needle and thread. I want to just sit there and do that all the time. And I think that's the way it is for all of us. When I'm thinking about how each of us has kind of narrowed our focus. Carol and her tea bags, she can do lots of art, but her main focus she's zeroing in on is the tea bags. And as I see her doing that, I see people connecting with that. Britt and the way she combines history with making jewelry. I mean, I'm always fascinated by the little history stories, and you can see that connection. It's going to take longer to find your people, or for your people to find you. That's the other thing. Are we supposed to go out there saying, hey, look at me, I make historical jewelry? Or do we just keep making the art that we know we are drawn to make, and trust that the universe has a magnet that's going to pull us all together?
Oh, I like that. I like that magnet part.
Yeah. And that's hard though, because that comes, I think, with, to me, a confidence that we have to find in ourselves, that we're doing what it is we're supposed to do. And when we were trying to be all things to all people, you couldn't have confidence that you were going to be all things to all people, because we could all walk into the same art museum, stand in front of the same painting, and some of us are going to love it, some of us are going to be neutral, and some of us are going to say, what the hell was he thinking?
Yeah. And even the people that love it will not have the same thought about it and how it makes them feel, or what, one person might see a little child with sunflowers and might be super happy, and the other person might be super sad because of whatever they experienced in their life, right? So
again, we cannot dictate how people are going to receive our art, or how they're going to receive us to the world. I can walk into a party and be my introverted self and sit on the couch and not talk to anybody, and somebody's going to think I'm a stuck-up snob, and somebody else is going to say, Susan's feeling really scared, somebody needs to go over there and sit next to her and bring her into conversation. And somebody else is going to say, I don't see Susan. So we cannot control what the rest of the world thinks of us. And I think as artists, it's up to us to be our own best friend and build that confidence in ourselves, and build a supportive environment like we have here, and with our own audiences that are going to pick us up when we're doubting. What is it? Renee said, negative words have way too much power. Now I try to take that negative and make it positive. I keep a journal of affirmations and quotes with me to help me ward off the negativity words moving forward. Yes.
I also wanted to say something to that. As I was reading that, I remember that I think half a year ago or a year ago, when I was really struggling with my art and like feeling really insecure, Lennon also suggested to keep track actually of validation. So I listed down like things people said or how they felt, and I did that for a time. And after that, I felt so much better about it, so I didn't need to do it anymore. So that was also a way to get out of seeking for validation by looking for it first.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I keep a book of kind words, and I screenshot all those comments as evidence, and the emails and all that stuff, because it takes, science has changed. It's been 7 to 15 positives that you need to knock out one negative, because we always remember that negative. And it's a matter, I think, of continually changing the stories we're telling ourselves. You know, is this really true? I mean, we have the evidence that it's not so true.
Right.
Shall I spin the wheel again? You want to get something else?
Yes.
Let's see what we got. All right. Tips for working with color. Oh my. That's hard for me. Who's got something?
Tips for working. Well, one tip is the color you see is not the color that you're even gonna use.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And then, you know, on monitors, of course, when you're representing your art, we always put that little disclaimer, if I remember to, you know, monitors make colors appear different. But even like sometimes when we're driving down the road, like yesterday, and you said, look at those red flags. And I'm looking at them, I'm thinking those are definitely orange. So even our own brains interpret color differently.
Right, and it's interesting. Like
They were
with
orange,
painting,
They were.
Yeah.
but with painting, the lighting is so important. Like even picking out colors. Like if you look at a landscape and you're like, okay, yeah, I know this tree is like, you know, green, and you know the leaves are green or whatever. But if you actually look at the color that's actually on, like if you take a picture and you look at, like, you use the little dropper to get the pic, it's like orange or something because, you know, of the lighting. So it's like your brain is interpreting it differently. And that's really important when you're like, I think that makes a difference when you like make art of how it then later will look like.
And also sometimes the color you really love might not work for what you try to do.
Yes.
I was painting my kitchen and I bought a blue color that I really, really loved, and I hated it in it. Absolutely didn't like it. So sometimes it's also in paintings, you know, it's the same thing. You really like some certain colors, but they don't fit well together, or it just doesn't look the way you wanted it to.
I find since I'm doing so much with greens, people say all greens go together, except in my mind, some greens are like fingernails on a chalkboard next to each other. And I can hold out the skeins of yarn and say, well, this looks pretty good next to this one. But then once I start stitching and I see them massed together, they don't work. So whereas when I was painting, I would make swatches, paint swatches. And I had a really good teacher that had a good tip years ago. I did my initial swatches of every paint and every color object, whether it was Neocolor crayons, whatever, on watercolor paper. And then I did them over again on the clear acrylic plastic, the sheet protectors, so that then you could put one over the other and see how they blended. It's not quite the same thing with stitch. So now I'm making samples of, like, you know, 20 French knots in one green, 20 in the other green. And so I can hold them next to each other like that, because they look completely different when they're stitched down, just like paint does when it's layered. Yes. Lisa, your stuff is mostly one color, right?
It looks that way. I do have a tendency towards the monochromatic or the grays and the earth tones, but it's interesting because.
How did you arrive there is what I wonder.
Because in my own house, and it's a problem for my husband and I, because I need the calm of not a lot of visual clutter, and he doesn't need visual clutter, but he wants pops of color. And so we struggle with how we're going to come to compromise on those things. But I do some, and I go back. I almost thought I was going to be a watercolorist at one time, and when I had gone back to school, I had a great watercolor teacher, and we talked a lot about and of course you go through color theory and the complementary colors and the analogous colors, but often if I do a piece that's colorful, it'll have a white background, and I do the drips in different colors. I will put complementary colors together because they will often help each other be more vibrant.
Nice. And Britt, you also, with metals, you don't have a lot. I noticed you've just started to add a new metal to your repertoire, right?
Yeah, I started with just working in bronze, mostly because the historical objects that I used as reference or inspiration were bronze, and I really love wearing bronze myself. But well, I'm also wearing silver now. This is also what I make myself. But yeah, I haven't been mixing it yet in one design. I sometimes like it when I see it, but for some reason I haven't tried it out yet. The only color I now add is like from gemstones, and some gemstones work better with the warm tint of bronze, and some really look better with the cooler tones of silver. You can also do a lot with patina, like you can make bronze green or dark brown or black, and
Right.
you can heat it. You can do a lot with color, but I only make like darker spots in a piece of work to get contrast.
Yeah, your stuff often looks like something that could have been unearthed, if somebody was out there on an archaeological dig. And I love that about it.
Yeah.
Carol,
I want it to look like that.
Yeah, it's you succeed in my mind. Carol, what about you? Because you start with the tea bags, you've got a very neutral background all the time. Do you look for color to add to it, or do you build upon those?
Well, I've expanded from the rust, because everything started out first everything was just rust. Now I can add color, and so I'm steering it in that direction, and then I just use the fabric paints, and then I'll just pick out fabrics that I think go good together. But going back to somebody said about it was Lisa, talked about the analogous, the complementary. That's a real yardstick for me. If I see a fabric I truly love, I'll look at and see what its complementary color is, and I don't feel like I can go wrong with just that one tip.
That's good. And somebody in the chat had posted out, I think, Terry, use color palettes for simulations. There are so many color palettes out there. You can put a photograph, upload a photograph that you like, and it will pull out the colors for you, whether it's paint colors. I can go to DMC and pull out the DMC thread colors if I wanted to do something like that. There are a lot of ways that you can pull those colors together, but I think the biggest tip with color is to experiment, and then to not feel bad. Like, I don't like pink. I do not like pink at all. It's just not my color, and although I love green, I like blue, I like browns, I like the earthy colors. But until I started experimenting with doing flowers and things and all these, I will make yellow flowers, I will make orange flowers, I'll make blue flowers. You will not see me very often do something with pink unless I'm trying to use up pink stuff. So you need to play and then not feel guilty. If this is, you discover your personal palette, of something that works for you and gets you excited about it. What else did I say over there?
We have a tendency to stick to like a charcoal gray for the backgrounds of our mosaics. We used to choose different colors, and it took a while for us to accept that our metal discs punched from aluminum cans almost always look better on the charcoal gray background. And occasionally we would have people make comments and say, like, why don't you do one with a red background or a yellow background or whatever? So I did like kind of a whole series of social media posts where I experimented with background colors and foreground colors and went through the whole process, made the art and everything. And it was really neat to be able to show our audience, why, like the thought process, like why would I choose this color over that color? Or maybe like I'm torn between these two colors, so I'm going to make both of them. And in the end, we made 2 mosaics that had a gradation of color on 2 different background colors. So it was like the same foreground with different background colors. They looked so different. And the one I thought I was going to love, I didn't. And then the one that I didn't like that much was the first one to sell after that. Yeah. So, and I feel like doing all of that was fun, interesting, playful, creative.
It gave us content.
Yes, it provided content. It kind of showed our audience what we might go through when we're trying to select color. But in the end, I came back to our charcoal gray because I know, like I have this, I feel like this is our color. It's almost like our signature. And I know it's just a boring gray, but still, it's like, this is what's going to work. Like we've done this hundreds of times. And yes, it might look great with a red background, but that's not what I want to do because I just don't have the confidence that that is going to be, represent us, the artists, that make things. So, but yeah, it was a good opportunity to make some interesting content. So I guess I would recommend that to all of y'all. Like Susan, when you have the 2 shades of green and you're like, no, make something anyway. And be like, this is why I did it.
Well, and I think, it again, it comes back to you built your evidence. You tried it, you experimented, and you're like, okay, this is what has the impact that I want. It doesn't matter if somebody else comes along and says, but that other one you did, it's like, great, that speaks to you. But this is us. We have discovered this is us. Now, Lisa, you had a thing with your bases where you do that beautiful technique with the wood. And that changed it for you, didn't it? From doing just plain wood to doing that treatment that you gave the wood?
Well, it changed how I created black. And so all of my bases are chosen from whatever color the sculpture has. And so sometimes natural wood and having the grain show is great. And sometimes having a black base that doesn't compete with the texture of the piece is what I need to do. And I had always been painting them, which I didn't love doing, just because I love texture, so I love the wood. So then when I learned how to do the walnut, creating the stain from the vinegar and steel wool, and it reacts with the tannins in the walnut and turns it black, you could still see the grain of the wood without it competing with the piece. And for me, that was like wonderful.
Yeah, it was a beautiful process when you showed that, and it sets off your sculptures just absolutely beautifully. So we have a question in the audience that I know a lot of people ask every time artists gather is, how do you go about pricing your art? I know, don't we all hate that question? Except it's tough. We know logically, right, what we're supposed to do, and we're supposed to figure our materials and our hours and how much heart and soul went into it and how many times we went to the ER because we cut ourselves with a tool or whatever it is. And we don't really put all that into it, right? I think Hannah and Nemo have probably worked the hardest over time. And I don't know, Britt, I haven't heard as much about your process on that. But all of us, I would be interested to know, how do we come to the prices we come to? And has that changed over time?
We do square inches.
Yeah, I can start. There's 2 things. One is another artist friend. At one point in time, I was asking her this question, and she said, I don't know, price is arbitrary. She's like, it doesn't make any difference what number you put on it, because for one person, it's going to be cheap, and for another person, it's going to be expensive, no matter what price it is. So I said, okay, that's kind of useful, and it makes it less difficult to just go ahead and just stamp that price tag on there and be like, I'm done with it. That's what it's going to be. Because someone's going to complain that it's too expensive.
Either way.
Someone is going to complain that you're not charging enough. But what we did at one point in time, we had what we kind of consider to be a standard format for ourselves, which was an 8x8, so an 8x8 square. And we felt like a good price at the time, this was years ago, a good price for that was $100. Like, it would be really great if we could sell this size for $100, because that feels right to us. And we did the math and we figured out what that would be per square inch. And over the years, looking back on it, I would say everything that we've done that was smaller than that and larger than that, we kind of applied this per square inch, starting with what would be that $100 price point. But as the years have gone by, we've kind of tweaked our formula. And we've gotten it to the point where it's still a per square inch price, but it depends on the size and how difficult it is for us to make it. So everything is kind of made the same, but we have what we call the pain in the ass factor, which is something to take into consideration. If you have
like with commission.
Yeah, if you have anything that's like, this is going to be harder for me to make for whatever reason, your per square inch price might be times a factor of 1.25 or 1.5 or 2 or 3. And lately, what it's been for us has been shipping. Because when we start making these large pieces, it becomes just everything about getting that thing in a box and getting it to where it needs to go is going to cost more. And it used to be the other way around. It used to be that we would charge more for the smaller pieces because it's like you're doing all this fine detail and it's almost like just as much, if not more work than a larger piece. But now it's sort of reversed itself because we sell only online. So it kind of has to do with your environmental factors as well. But having big boxes, bigger frames, heavier stuff, sometimes having to use a freight company to ship, all of that is stuff we take into account. And then every now and then we have something that just doesn't fit any formula. And that is a lot of times priced based on our instinct. Like, does this sound right?
Yeah.
And I can't really give any advice more than that. It's like, feel right, Yeah, I think that's
feel
right.
When we started, we would charge a lot. Remember, because we would always say we're getting paid to learn because we're learning how to make our art.
Yeah.
We just wanted to get sold.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like every piece that we sold, we had to make another one, which we would get better at making more because we would make more.
Yes, and we didn't want anybody to complain, so we were very hesitant about charging too much for someone to be like, "Oh, I don't really like it that much."
And we went up every year.
Yeah, we did.
Every year you go up.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, sorry.
No, go ahead, Britt. Go ahead.
In the beginning, you want to sell more, and now I think I'd rather sell less for the right price, even though I'm still not there. I still charge for my bronzes. I don't charge enough. But when I started to try and take myself a bit more seriously, I started raising the prices because I thought, I want to make this a business and not just sell the stuff. I want to have a business out of this. I want to make sure that I can lose a couple side jobs that I have and make this what I do. And then you have to raise your prices. You can't just sell for what it cost you. That's not viable.
That's not a business.
But it is hard. It is hard.
Lisa, what about you?
Well, I was thinking about Britt, and I have a good friend that's a metalsmith, and she's very, very good about keeping track of how much silver or copper, or then the casting, and then the this, and the blah, blah, blah. And then she keeps track of every hour she spends on the piece, and she charges it per hourly basis, and that's what she charges. I can't do it. I don't always know how much clay I've used because I put on and I take off. And I did a post about this once. Does waiting count? I do some sculpting, and then like painters, they have to wait for it to dry or whatever. And then I need to let the clay set up to get it just right so I can add some more. And then you go back to the next day. So theoretically, did I spend a week on that piece, even though it took me a month to complete because I had to let it get just, and then every time you fire it, I did an exercise in figuring out how much it costs to fire my kiln every time based on its wattage. And I was astounded. And I'm like, oh my, and some of my pieces go through 4 times because every time I add a color, it goes through again. And I have not figured it out. I talked to an art fair artist, and they're like, well, here's what I do. I start out with this price, and then if they sell, then, because you always have to think about how long will it take you to replace that piece, and how many pieces do you need to sell to get where you want to go? And he'd say, okay, that sold well, I'm going to raise 10% at the next show, and then we'll see how that goes, and then onward. And he said, and then when sales start declining, but yet I'm making what I want, I know I've hit the sweet spot. And I'm like, okay, well, you have to do a lot of art fairs to come to that point.
Yeah.
So I don't have a good answer for this.
Carol? I'm sorry, Maria, go ahead.
Carol, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm not as far along as any of you guys are as far as putting up my work for sale. In fact, up until I'd say the last month, I had nothing for sale. Now I've been selling my online course, which has done okay. There's only one. I hope to have more than that. But as far as pricing work, I have the mindset right now to make my work only to promote my class. So I make a lot of stuff, but nobody ever sees it because it was part of a project for the class. So I'm kind of behind you guys when it comes to pricing work.
You're not behind, you're just in a different lane. You're in a different lane, and that's totally fine. Maria?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, the pricing is, it can be anything from doing the square feet, or doing the hours, or what do you count in there and what do you do not count in there. I mean, if you look at it as an artist, if you if that was that's what you want, right? You want it to be the full-time job or something like that, right? So you need to consider cost of living too. So if you live somewhere where it's more expensive, then your prices have to be higher. And
Yeah, you're right. And even like the recent years, things have gotten more expensive.
Right.
And we're not being fair to ourselves if we keep our prices the same. Like we use Baltic birch as our background for our art because it's very it's least likely to warp. But for a while we couldn't get it. It comes from Russia, and we couldn't get it. And then when we finally could get it, it was 4 or 5 times more expensive than it was before. That's crazy, So our art costs more now. I didn't want to raise the price, but that's just the way the world works.
Yeah. Mona, what about you? You have any thoughts?
Just to know that it's really difficult. And I also tried to do the thing with the measurements, but then I spent like so much time on one tiny painting, and then the next time I did the larger one, and it was like, I don't know, like the shortest amount, but I really liked it. And it's just different all the time. And then the waiting, like Lisa said, goes in, and you wait around, or do you do something in the meantime? How do you split it up? It's really hard, and I don't have an answer yet either. It's figuring it out with every piece.
Yeah, I agree. And I've done so much on the instinct pricing, and I know that's wrong. I have painter friends that say, well, all my 5x7s are this price, my 8x10s are this price, my 18x20s are this price. And I keep thinking, well, even if I got to that point, it would be nice to get to that point where I could have like 3 or 4 sizes of something and know they would go at that price. But I don't think I've made enough of any one thing that I can say it takes me about this many hours, because I'm still figuring it out.
Right. Yeah, and everything is different. Just because it's a certain size doesn't mean it's going to take you the same amount of time.
Right.
That's why I often, or more often, go for the hours versus the size, because if you make a piece very detailed, it might be really small but really detailed, or it might be really big and pretty loose or abstract, and it doesn't take you that much time, so.
But for me, it's sometimes I can spend a lot of time on a piece, but it's because I'm really struggling with trying to figure something out or learning something. And then how can I take a piece that's the same size as another piece and essentially be in the same zone and not charge the same price, even though this one took me, like, I would charge the same amount because they're, you know, it's a 10-inch figure and it's a 10-inch figure and versus 2 figures. But I needed to learn something and I got frustrated, but I could have just chunked the thing and started over.
Yeah. I think we're in the same boat. Like we price things like per size, and sometimes.
Yeah, but ours are different because they're like, if it's 100 nails versus 200 nails, the work for us is just double. Like it's not like a smaller one. It's less nails, so it's less work. Because it's, you know, we don't go over it a couple of times.
Yeah, it would only if you made like if you made smaller circles or something on the same size, then it would make a difference, right?
But the things that could potentially change our prices that we don't do this is the rarity of a can. So like sometimes it'll be difficult to find a can, or we only get a few, and we make a piece, and that might be $100, and then we make another one out of cans that are very common. That's still $100. Like,
but we can say we have, you know, unlimited amount of Coke versus.
Well, that's right. We know we can make more of that one versus the other one we can't. Yeah. I guess it evens out in the end, in a way. We've just had that enough experience, enough sales over the years to say that this is going to work out. It's going to be okay. Like, even if one piece is more rare or one piece was reworked or something like that.
I really like what Lisa said, though, about there was something that you had to learn from a piece, because that's kind of the stage that I feel like I'm in right now. I'm not sure about prices I put on things, and I made discounts or put a bunch of stuff on sale next month. And I'm okay with that because of the things that I had to learn to get to the next stage. And the pieces I'm working on now are going to be different because, again, there's more things I'm learning. So there's more time going into it. So while I've learned how to make one part of something faster, there's something else I know that's going to take more time because I'm still learning about it. And it's okay to get paid to learn, I think, but it's a factor going forward. I think we're going to get better at all of this. And I think it all comes back to us getting confidence in ourselves as artists. And there's the artist hat, and then there's the business person salesman's hat. And it's hard to wear both hats at the same time. So you have to like make this mental mind shift to, okay, I'm in this, what does Lennon call them? The seasons. You know, I'm in this season of creating or sowing seeds. And if you haven't figured out where your happy zone is of what really lights you up, I mean, when I'm looking at these artists here and I'm remembering seeing their art for the first few times and seeing them talk about it and the excitement that comes across even through the screen, they found their zone. And so if you're watching this and you're still wondering why, you know, you're racing around to try and find something to sell because that's what people are going to buy, that's the wrong way to approach it. Find the something that you want to create that's going to light you up, because that's going to give you confidence in your artistic self. And then worry about making art you love, and then you can worry about selling it, unless you're trying to put a roof over your head. And it's hard to jump right into art and do that. Let's see, were there any other questions here? Yeah, so Lamia is talking about bulk making and people wanting to know how much time to do stuff. And I think it's another mind shift between operating, okay, this is a personal opinion here, because it's something that I struggled with for a long time. I had a poverty mindset that everything had to make me money. And so I had to make great masses of something because that's what people were going to buy from me, and that was going to bring the money in. And it's very hard to make that shift to say, but I wasn't having a good time doing it. I mean, I quit YouTube, you know, other than doing a weekly live stream for a couple of years, because I didn't want to do bulk makes. I didn't want to do what everybody else was doing. So I'm of the mind that before you can be an artist in business for yourself, you have to be an artist. Before you can be an artist with a business, you have to be an artist for yourself. You have got to make your art that excites you, because it is going to show up in your work. If I ask Lisa to go in there and make me a pop art Andy Warhol kind of piece of something with all these different colors, okay, number one, I would never do that because I can't stand it. But, you know, if I asked her to do that, if she was even willing to entertain a commission of something like that, she should, one, charge me through the nose because it's not something she wants to do. And two, if she did it, I bet you she would be miserable because it's not the stuff that excites her. You know, the human form and articulating an emotion into that human form through clay. I mean, I see it. Every one of her sculptures excites me. And that's where that excitement comes across. So she learns how to do that. Then she learns how to sell it. Hannah and Nemo have figured out what it is that excites them about combining this recycling mentality and this slow living and putting it into art so that every time somebody looks at a piece of their art on the wall, they're reminded, slow down, breathe. Every breath you take is going to cause those cans to move. You know, Maria and her art, she takes you to that place of refuge because we are in this crazy world full of so much hate and anger. And Maria paints from her heart to this place to help you remember it's okay to slow down in today's world and breathe. And she reminds us of that. And she creates this piece of art that will let you take, I mean, she interviews you so that you can go to this place in your own head. Mona is one of the most encouraging artists that I have met. She is, she's a member of, we're all members of Lennon's group, but she's also the community leader in the beginners group. And she just, the way she encourages everybody, and I see that in her own art. When I'm watching some of the free watercolor tutorials, I don't do watercolor. I've tried, I've got a really heavy hand with all that stuff. But you know, when I watch hers, I think I could do it. I think I could try because she's in her happy place. She's not picking up an oil pen or oil paints. She's not hammering nails because she could do it, but she can see she's in that happy zone. And watch Britt talk about jewelry and history. Oh my goodness. You want to go back to medieval and Viking times? You are in a time machine because you see the joy. She's not bulk making. She could very easily whip out a whole bunch of really cheap charms and sell those. And, you know, she can do that if she wants, if she's going to a craft show where she knows there's going to be a whole lot of people there and she needs some inexpensive makes. But she comes alive when she's creating the art from her heart. And Carol, your journey has been really interesting to watch because you are focusing in on something as simple, like Hannah and Nemo, the aluminum can we throw away, the tea bags that so many of us use every single day. We don't look at them and see a piece of art. And Carol looks at this simple tea bag and says, what can I do with it? It's a piece of paper. It's a piece of fabric. I can make all these things from it, and all the different ways she can approach a tea bag. Now, she could toss that aside. She could do the same things with watercolor paper. She could do the same things with fabric, and she has. But she chose to focus on something that gets her excited. Okay, so my point of all of this is if you are not doing what lights you up, you might be doing the wrong thing. It's not the focus on the sales. It's the focus on the joy. And you know, if you know me at all, it's the making art because it makes you happy. Because if you're not happy, it's going to show up in your work. You know, I've done paper, I've done painting. It's not that I was okay at it, but it didn't light me up. So find your fire. I don't know. So that's my soapbox. Anybody have any final words? Okay, Susan's soapbox is going away. Who else has any final words? Because I want to be respectful of your time, and we've been yakking for an hour.
I love what you said. That sounded like a great wrap up of our hour discussion.
Agreed.
I just am so grateful that each of you guys took the time to come hang out with us here and chat about this. And I know this video is going to get some replays, and I'm always excited to talk about art and creativity. What did you guys think about the spinner wheel? Is that something to keep around?
Yeah, I
Love it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I like it.
Fun.
Okay,
Yeah.
so post some more suggestions. Those of you in the chat, if anybody has any suggestions for more topics that we can add to the wheel, I'll take off validation and color that we did discuss, and I guess pricing, because that was a good discussion as well.
Yep.
All right, the replay will be available for everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you probably next month somewhere for another alumni live stream. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, Susan.
Bye.
Bye.